You got to see I'm carrying this. You got to see this piece.
Family home.
During that interview, you never disclosed Andrew Romero's name as anybody involved. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And why is that, Miss Lewis?
Because I was trying to protect him.
Now, after Officer Pope talked to you, you also spoke to Officer Parks from the Rio Rancho. Do you recall him?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, during that interview, he was asking you for the person's name. You started telling him, first of all, did you tell them that the story that you had given was not true?
Yes.
You're going to have to answer up.
Yes.
Yeah, she needs to record it. So. And that was pretty early on when Officer Parks was interviewing you, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you tell Officer Parks then pretty much what happened as far as the stop. Okay. What did you tell Officer Parks after you told him that it was the story that you had told Officer Pope and the EMTs and people at the scene? What did you tell him?
I told him that I just gave them EMT guys a story because they wanted to know, so I just gave them a story.
Okay. Now, was Officer Parks trying to find out the individual who, well, what else did you tell them? Did you tell them I don't know whether to say, did you start telling them the facts of what occurred, Officer Parks?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you tell them? What did you tell them?
I told him that I still told him that I was held against my will.
Okay. And but did you tell them about the stop and what occurred after the stop?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Officer Parks was asking you the name of the individual who shot Officer Benner, correct?
Yes.
Did you tell Detective Parks the name?
No.
Okay. What were you asking? Were you telling him that you would tell him the name?
Yeah, I just wanted to go home.
Okay. And at some point, again, why weren't you telling Andrew's name?
Because I was trying to protect us.
Protect you both?
Yes.
Okay. Afterwards, did you finally tell
Yes. Yes, sir.
Detective Parker? Now, you weren't allowed to go home, were you?
No.
Now, you gave another statement there at the hospital either that night or shortly thereafter, is that right?
Yes, sir.
From Rick Romero from the Rio Rancho Police Department and Agent Steve Montano from the New Mexico State Police, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And they Mirandized you, right?
Yes.
And what did you do? Did you continue to talk with them?
Yes, I did.
Did you waive your Miranda?
I waived my rights, yes.
Did you understand what you were doing?
Yes.
Now, also, later on, you requested from Mr. Montano that you wanted to be transported. After you gave that statement, you wanted to get transported and wanted to speak to Mr. Montano again. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how that occurred.
I got released from the hospital, and I asked if I could get transported to the state police. I could talk to Detective Montano.
Now, Tabitha, did they transport you?
Yes.
Okay. And so you initiated that you wanted to speak to the state police?
Yes.
And that was a day or two after the murder occurred, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, again, they Mirandized you, right?
Yes.
And you waived your Miranda, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, on both of those, all the statements, Tabitha, you talk about, well, not all, about the second half of Detective Park and then Rick Romero, Steve Montano, and then Agent Montano again. What did you tell them happened regarding the involvement of Andrew Romero? Was it consistent with pretty much what?
Objection, leading.
Outstanding. What did you tell them?
I told them that that it was me and him in the vehicle, and we got pulled over. Andrew pushed me out of the car. Instead of him driving off, he drove up a little bit. He was throwing out items from the vehicle, and Officer Benner exited his truck, and he was running up to me, and he asked me if I was okay. I said yes. He started running up towards the back of the vehicle. He got to the back door of the vehicle, about the back door of the vehicle, and that's when I heard 4 shots. I didn't realize that. I realized I had got hit. Officer Benner had turned around and he said, "What was his name?" and then he just fell.
And at what point, Tabitha, did you tell them your involvement in this?
No,
Why?
because I was scared and I was trying to protect myself.
Today, have you told the truth?
Yes.
Now, Tabitha, you entered into a plea and disposition agreement, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And I kind of want to go over that with you. That was entered on August 15th, 2016. Do you recall entering that plea and disposition agreement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, do you recall what you pled to?
Yes.
What did you plead to?
I pled to harboring a felon
And why?
because I kept Andrew's name from the police.
Okay. And what else?
And conspiracy to commit armed robbery.
Okay. And that being why? Why'd you plead to conspiracy to commit armed robbery?
Because of the robbery.
That's coming up to Rio Rancho?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Tabitha, well, let me go from there. In your plea and disposition agreement, did you admit that you were the same person that was convicted on 2 counts on January 23rd, 2007 of transferring a stolen motor vehicle and conspiracy to commit robbery?
Yes.
Okay. And that was on January 23rd, 2007 that you were convicted, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You admitted that you were the same person convicted on 2 other charges on January 10th, 2011 of larceny over $500 but not more than $2,500 and escape from community custody. Do you recall that?
Yes.
You're the same person?
Yes.
And also on January 10th, 2011, you pled to, or you were convicted of possession of a controlled substance. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then on November 16th, 2011, you were convicted of 2 offenses: possession of controlled substance with the intent to distribute, that being cocaine, and conspiracy to commit possession of controlled substance with the intent to distribute cocaine. You recall that? Are you the same person?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, Tabitha, do you know, pursuant to this plea and disposition agreement, what is your total exposure time that you haven't been sentenced, correct?
No, sir.
Okay. And what is your total exposure time that you're looking at pursuant to the plea and disposition agreement?
20 and a half
20 and a half
years.
Okay. And also, but of that 20 and a half years, there is a mandatory,
16 years.
so you will be sentenced no matter what to a minimum of 16 years or 16 years in Department of Corrections. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the other charges that were alleged against you pursuant to the plea and disposition agreement are dismissed. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, Tabitha, you, as you've indicated, you've been in the Department of Corrections. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And by being in the Department of Corrections, you earn certain good time. Is that right? Or you can earn good time?
Yes, it's up to the Department of Corrections.
And what do you have to do to earn good time?
You have to program. You can't have no write-ups. And then you lose good time. You just basically gotta be on your best behavior.
So, Are you saying that you can earn it, but it can be taken away later on?
Yes.
Okay. So technically, you could do the entire 16 years of the mandatory 16 years. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, also part of the plea and disposition agreement, we talked a little bit about the armed robberies, and I mentioned them. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That those armed robberies at that point occurred in the 2nd Judicial District. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And they have agreed, pursuant to this agreement, not to pursue those charges. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Additionally, Tabitha, this agreement is in exchange, well, pursuant to the plea and disposition agreement. Fine. Here. Is pursuant to your being truthful and your testimony being truthful. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That's why you haven't been sentenced yet.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that will be determined, you were told at the plea and disposition agreement hearing that the court indicated that they could withdraw the plea.
Yes, sir.
And a determination of whether you were being truthful or not would be determined today.
Yes, sir.
Now, so I guess what we're saying is that
Objection leading.
What is your understanding, Tabitha, if you are not truthful?
That plea goes out the window, and I have to, and I will get judged according to the court.
Okay. And what's your understanding of who makes that decision?
The judge.
Now, Tabitha, you're also today were provided or given use immunity. Do you know what? Did your attorneys talk to you about that?
Yes, sir.
And what's your understanding of that?
That anything that I say cannot be used against me.
Okay. Is it your understanding that you could still be charged, but they can't use anything that you say?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that was in lieu of the fact of you admitting or testifying that you had sold drugs.
Yes.
So, and that was those drugs were sold in Albuquerque, from my understanding.
Yes.
So they could still pursue it. They just can't use anything you say.
Correct.
Now, Tabitha, you know, some people may feel that you got a really good deal, and this is why you.
Objection. The lawyer in this case is testifying. There's no question.
Well, how do you feel? Why is it, Tabitha, other than the plea and disposition agreement, why are you testifying today?
Because I'm taking responsibility for my actions.
Okay. I'll pass the witness.
Good afternoon, Ms. Littles.
Afternoon.
You know, since we're talking about it, why don't we just continue to have a bit of a conversation about your plea agreement, okay?
Okay.
Before we move on to other things, you were originally charged with a variety of very serious crimes in this case, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And your lawyer's sitting behind you, so if you have any questions about what I ask you, please refer to Mr. Porter, because I don't want there to be any misconstruing my questions or any question that the certainty of your answer, about the certainty of your answer, okay?
Yes, sir.
If I ask you anything that you don't understand, you let me know immediately, or you confer with Mr. Porter, okay?
Yes, sir.
So originally, on June 12th of 2015, you were charged with an open count of murder, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that carried, at least potentially, if you were convicted of first degree, life imprisonment, right?
Yes, sir.
And you know from speaking with Mr. Porter that life imprisonment means you don't even begin to think about parole for 30 years, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you were also charged with attempt to commit a felony, armed robbery, and that would be, and that's 9 years, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then conspiracy to commit armed robbery, that's another 3, right?
Objection, Your Honor, I believe that's 3 years.
I just said that's another 3 years.
Oh, you said that.
Okay. Cindy, where's the pointer? I forgot the mouse. All right. And then you were charged also with aggravated fleeing of a law enforcement officer, and that's a 4th-degree felony, right? That carries another 1.5 years,
Yes,
right?
sir.
And then you were charged with harboring of a felon, that's a 4th-degree felony, carrying 1.5 years, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you were charged with the registration count, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, so it looks to me, if I'm not mistaken, that the original exposure of this indictment was life plus 16 originally, right? Life plus 16 years?
Yeah, I think the attempted murder is also a 3rd-degree
Your Honor, I believe that you misstated the attempted armed robbery is 3 years.
That's right.
I'm sorry, okay. So life plus, so it's life plus 3.
9 years.
Life plus 9, right?
Yes,
All
sir.
right. And that was the basic original sentence that you were facing if you were convicted of all these charges, right?
Yes, sir.
But as you've spoken, or as counsel spoke with you a moment ago, you have 3 valid convictions for purpose of the Habitual Offender Act, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you know that for every basic count in this indictment, other than the life sentence and the misdemeanor, your sentence could be enhanced by an additional 8 years per count, correct?
Yes, sir.
So if I'm not mistaken then, the life plus 9 is actually life plus 35? If you include all of the habitual offender time, potentially, and all of the charges if you were convicted.
It's actually more than that, but
Yes, sir.
I might have been low on the number, right? It's actually life plus even more than 35 years, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how old are you?
I'm 32 years old.
Okay. And as part of the plea bargain, as part of your plea, the murder charge was dismissed, right?
Yes, sir.
Everything was dismissed except the attempt to commit a felony and the harboring, right?
Objection.
It's the conspiracy.
I'm sorry, conspiracy to commit armed robbery and harboring, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the state agreed to bring 2 8-year habitual offenses against you, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And your sentence is for 16 years on the habitual offender, right?
so it's 16 and 20, but 20 and
Yeah, it's 16 mandatory and then 20 and a half.
Right, and the state has agreed to suspend the underlying, right?
Yes.
Yes. All right. And counsel asked you a little bit about good time in the joint, right? In the prison, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you're already serving a sentence that you have, but basically 2 more years to go, right?
If I don't lose good time.
Okay. And the agreement was that any new time you got would run concurrent with what you're already serving, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so you know, based on your previous experience at the penitentiary, that all of the crimes you pled to, you're eligible for good time at a rate of 50%, day for day good time credit, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so you know, based on your experience with the penitentiary, based on your experience with what you need to do to earn good time, that you can be out of jail, in this case, in approximately 8 years, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And of those 8 years, approximately 2 of them are you're serving consecutive for the crimes you've already been sentenced on, right?
Yes.
So this deal, your agreement to testify, you know that what you've negotiated buys you a grand total of 6 additional years in the penitentiary, right? If you earn all of your good time.
Yes.
Yeah. And it gets better than that, does it not? Well, there was another part of your plea that saves you a whole bundle of time, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. It's all those robberies we talked about, right?
Yes, sir.
And you were charged, the plea agreement says that for a period of time between March and May of 2015, Ms. Brandenburg, up in the 2nd Judicial District, is not going to charge you, and you are not going to you're not going to get indicted for a whole bunch of robberies that you've admitted to today, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and we've had this discussion before that there were as many as 10, but you think there were about 9, right? Right?
Yes, sir.
And each one of those robberies carries 9 years if you're convicted and if you got sentenced, right?
Yes, sir.
With an additional 8 years for the habitual offender. So each one of those 9 counts carries up to 17 years, right?
Yes, sir.
And so 17 times 9 is another 150 odd years.
Yes, sir.
So, and you're not getting any time for any of those, right?
As of right now, no.
Based on your plea agreement, based on Ms. Brandenburg's word, and based on her signature, nobody from the state is bringing any of those charges against you, right?
Correct.
Okay. But it gets better than that, doesn't it? Well, today, the state sought out, and the judge ordered what's called use immunity, right?
Yes, sir.
And use immunity means that you can't be charged, or you could be charged with certain crimes, but they can't use anything you said on the stand today against you for crimes you've admitted to today, right?
Yes, sir.
And you know that's important, right?
Yes, sir.
Because one of your priors, I'm going to talk about your priors in a moment, but one of your priors is trafficking cocaine, right?
Yes, sir.
And you know good and well that if you get a second conviction for trafficking cocaine, that carries another mandatory 18 years, right? As a first-degree felony, trafficking cocaine or trafficking drugs, if you have a second one, it's a mandatory 18 years if you get convicted, right?
Yes, sir.
So what, in essence, this use immunity did for you today is you could take the stand and you could testify about all these bad things that you did, selling drugs at a halfway house and giving dope to your friends and selling dope and being a meth dealer, right? But nobody can use that against you, even though if you were charged and convicted, each thing you admitted to would carry a mandatory 18 years, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the bottom line on all of this is you face life plus dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of years, right?
Yes.
And life, and at 34, if you'd been convicted of all this, you would have left the penitentiary in a box, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you would have left the penitentiary in a box because you had so much time. There's only a finite number of years each of us have on this earth, right?
Yes, sir.
And when you add all of the time that you could have gotten, that far exceeds any natural life for a human being, right?
Yes, sir.
So thus, the option was either leave the penitentiary in a box or agree to testify for the government, correct? Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's talk for a moment about what your prior felony convictions are. So your prior felony convictions on June 12, 2006, you were convicted of receiving or transferring a stolen motor vehicle, right?
Yes, sir.
Also, as part of that plea agreement, on July 10th of 2006, you were convicted of conspiracy to commit armed robbery, right?
Yes.
On January 12th of 2009, you were convicted
Objection.
of larceny.
I think you're quoting the wrong conviction date, Counsel.
January 12th, 2009?
January 10th, 2011 is the conviction date.
I apologize. I'm sorry. Let me start over. You were convicted of receiving or transferring a stolen motor vehicle on January 23rd of 2007, right?
Yes.
Okay. Also, on January 23rd, 2007, you were convicted of conspiracy to commit armed robbery, right?
Yes, sir.
And then on January 10th of 2011, you were convicted of larceny, right?
Yes, sir.
And then also on January 10th of 2011, you were convicted of escape from community custody, right?
Yes, sir.
And then on or about January 10th of 2011, you were convicted of possession of a controlled substance, right?
Yes, sir.
And then on November 16th of 2011, you were convicted of possession with the intent to distribute cocaine, right?
Yes, sir.
And then on November 16th of 2011, you were convicted of conspiracy to commit possession of a controlled substance with the intent to distribute cocaine, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the escape, that was, you were convicted of that because you were out on conditions of release.
Objection, Your Honor. I believe that the court may have, as far as what they could go into.
It's an explanation of the conviction.
I'll allow the explanation.
Okay. The escape from community, or the escape charge was because you cut the bracelet off and ran off, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in exchange for all of the things we've talked about, the elimination of all of this time behind bars, your agreement is you'll testify truthfully, right?
Yes, sir.
And you'll agree with me, and we're going to get into each of the individual statements you've made, which are many, right?
Yes, sir.
But you'll agree with me that over and over and over again, you have either lied to the police, right?
Yes, sir.
Told half-truths, right?
Yes, sir.
Misconstrued the facts, right?
Yes, sir.
Or just flat out told things that were not true, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, let's talk for a minute about something else, another thing that's kind of compelling you to enter into this agreement, okay? You have 2 little girls, right?
Yes, sir.
And your children, when you got out of prison, you were living with your girls, right?
Yes.
You have to answer now, sweetheart. If you need a break, you let me know. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Right? But because you started smoking methamphetamine again, your girls went to live with your mom, right?
They stayed living with my mom.
Because you were unfit to be a parent at the time, because you were smoking methamphetamine.
Objection, Your Honor. That's a characterization.
The truth is
It's the truth. She's.
Overruled.
You can go ahead and answer the question.
When I got out on parole, I paroled to my mother's house. So the whole time I was out on parole, I was living at my mother's house.
Okay. But then you started smoking methamphetamine and you moved into a motel and you were unfit to care for those children, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But they mean a lot to you, right?
Yes, they do.
I mean, your one girl just turned 14, right?
Yes.
And the little one is 6 or 7.
She's 6 years old.
And you really want to be a mother to them, don't you?
Yes, I do.
You want to be involved in their lives one day, right?
Yes, I do.
Because little girls need their mom, right?
Yes.
And since you haven't been involved in their lives, your 13-year-old or 14-year-old has started down a very, very bad path, hasn't she?
Yes.
I mean, she's already in trouble, right?
Yes, sir.
She's on probation and she seems to be following in your footsteps, right?
Yes, sir.
And you want to get out as soon as you can so that you can rectify any damage you've done by not being there as a mom, right?
Yes.
And you want to get out of jail as soon as you can before these little girls turn out like you, right?
I want to be able to be out with my kids so I could raise them.
So they don't end up in the Department of Corrections like you've spent a good deal of your young life.
Correct.
And so this is certainly a motivating factor for you entering into this plea. Not only do you not want to leave prison in this box we've talked about, but you've got every motivation in the world to get out so you can be with your kids, right?
Yes, sir.
And so with that, we begin the backdrop of your truthful testimony today, okay?
Yes, sir.
Now, so when you entered the courtroom today, you're not dressed like an inmate from the Department of Corrections, are you?
No, I'm not.
But those aren't the normal clothes you wear every day, are they?
No.
You wear either a green or an orange Department of Corrections jumpsuit, right? Or prison-issued clothes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you were allowed to put on clothes like unincarcerated individuals just to testify today, right?
Yes, sir.
But when you leave here, you're going to go back to your Department of Correction outfit for the rest of your sentence, assuming you can earn your good time, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You testified that when you left the Department of Corrections after your last sentence, you paroled to your mom's house, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you were working at Quality Inn in Albuquerque.
Yes, sir.
And you were helping raise your kids, right?
Yes.
But then I think you intimated that you met Andrew and your life started going downhill, right?
Yes.
Okay, but that's not altogether true, is it?
Okay. I met Andrew. Okay.
Well, just yes or no. I got to follow. I have another question
I'm
for
going to
you.
object, Your Honor, for the characterization of intimate. I don't think she's indicated anything. She just indicated she met Andrew Romero.
You met Andrew Romero, and you told the jury that your life went downhill from there. You started using drugs.
Objection, Your Honor, she didn't say that. She just said that she met Andrew Romero, and this is what happened.
All right. But your life, you started using methamphetamine after you released the Department of Corrections, way before you met Andrew, right?
I started using methamphetamines like maybe about a month before I met Andrew.
Okay. And that's because the baby daddy in your life, the father of one of your kids, was a meth dealer, and he gave you meth after he got out of the joint, and you started smoking up meth again, right?
Yes.
Yes. And you talked about knowing Crystal Romero, right?
Yes.
And Crystal's Andrew's cousin, right?
Yes.
And Crystal was a buddy of yours from the Department of Corrections, right?
Yes, sir.
And after you got out of the Department of Corrections, you were smoking methamphetamine because your boyfriend was giving it to you, right?
My baby's dad was giving it to me.
Okay. And you were also dealing for him, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And one of the people you smoked methamphetamine with and also sold methamphetamine to was Crystal Romero, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and so you meet Andrew through a good buddy of yours from the Department of Corrections that you smoked meth with, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So your characterization earlier that that maybe it was Andrew's presence in your life that caused things to go downhill simply isn't
I'm
true.
going to object again. He's testified. He can say, this is what she said, and leave it at that. Your Honor.
That's what I'm doing. I'm asking a leading question. All right. Now, you said earlier that you lost your job at the Quality Inn, right?
Yes.
You also said that it was because your baby daddy came over there and made a big fuss and got you kicked out, right?
He went over there and made a big fuss, and so my boss decided it was best that I didn't work there no more.
Actually, you got fired because you stopped coming to work, right?
That as well, but the main thing was my baby's dad.
But you weren't going to work, so you got fired. Because you
better answer the question, Your Honor.
Because-
That's an answer.
Okay, my baby's dad started my problems for me at work, okay? So I just stopped going to avoid all of that.
And you were also smoking meth at the time, too, right?
Yes, but when I was smoking meth and working, when I was working and smoking meth, I was still going to work and I was still going to school, so I was taking care of my responsibilities.
And you were selling meth on the side, right?
Objection, Your Honor. I believe the court has made a ruling on this. Overruled.
And in addition to these other things that you believe are positive in your life, you were a meth dealer, right?
And a meth user? Yes.
Meth dealer and user.
Yes.
And when you were asked how much meth you were using, you said you started off just smoking a bowl of meth here and there.
Couple bowls here and there.
So those of us who are uneducated on the amount of methamphetamine in a bowl that you smoke, how much are you ingesting each time you smoke said bowl?
I'm not exactly sure exactly how much it is.
Easy to lose track, right?
Yes.
But at one point in time, and I've asked you about this before, right? I've asked you about how much you were using each day. And on this, yes?
Yes, sir.
And on the stand today, you said you were using about a gram a day, and that was $50 a gram, right?
50 or 60,
Okay.
yes.
But in the past, you've told me you were using as much as 2 grams a day, right?
Give or take, yes.
Yeah. So, like I said, it's easy to lose track when you're smoking meth. But your actual answer is that you've told me in the past is you were using up to 2 grams a day, give or take.
Give or take, yes.
And you're not shooting it up, right? You're just smoking it.
No, I'm just smoking it.
Okay. And let's talk about Crystal Romero for a moment. When you would deal to Crystal, when you would sell her meth, you would also get high at her house, right?
Yes.
And you would get high with Crystal's infant children. They're in the home when you were getting high, right?
Objection. I don't believe she testified to that.
I'm asking her.
What, Your Honor, it's irrelevant. What does it have to do with the charges that we're looking at today?
May we approach you?
So if you remember that, just
Romero would smoke methamphetamine in her apartment. Her children were there with you as well, right?
Her son,
Her son. How old's her son?
he was less than a year.
So an infant.
Yes.
Okay. And you were asked if you recognized this person. And I believe you said the answer is yes, right?
Yes, sir.
Now let's talk about this person for a moment. This person's name is Michelle Candelaria, right?
Yes.
And while the picture may not be very flattering, Michelle is actually a female, right?
Yes, she is.
And you talked about how big she was and such, right?
Yes.
And would now, is Michelle currently in the Department of Corrections to the best of your knowledge?
No.
Okay. Is Crystal?
No, sir.
Okay. When was the last time you saw Michelle Candelaria?
A couple weeks before. May 25th.
Okay. And you would also get high with Michelle Candelaria, correct?
Yes, sir.
Same thing. You and Crystal and Michelle would all smoke methamphetamine together, right?
Let me correct you. Michelle didn't start smoking meth with us until after she got out of the Department of Corrections. When she got out of the Department of Corrections, it was her and Crystal. And that's when I started hanging out with Andrew.
Okay, all right. So, but to the best of your knowledge, Michelle Candelaria, who's pictured in this photograph, it also smokes methamphetamine, as far as you know, right?
Yes.
And you indicated that Michelle has also been to the Department of Corrections as well, correct?
That's where I met her at, yes.
You met Michelle Candelaria in the Department of Corrections too?
Yes.
And were you friends with Michelle?
Yes, sir.
And so, were you ever cellmates with Michelle?
No.
Were you ever in the same pod or in the same unit together?
Yes.
Okay. And what about Crystal? You were cellmates with Crystal?
We were in the same pod.
In the same pod. And for those of us, those individuals in the jury who don't understand, what is a pod in the Department of Corrections?
In the women's prison, we don't live in individual rooms. It's big open dorms. There's about 13 pods in that prison that we all live together.
All right.
Our beds are right next to each other.
I'm sorry. So during your time, at least a portion of your time in the Department of Corrections, you shared the same pod with both Michelle Candelaria and Crystal, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you were released at different times, right?
Yes.
Okay. But the three of you were friends, certainly, correct?
Yes.
Now, the Dodge Durango that we've been talking about, you got that car, or that SUV from your mother, right?
Yes.
Kind of as a welcome back to society present, right? You needed something to get around and make your appointments, right?
Yes, sir.
And your mom intended to transfer that title to your name, right?
Yes.
And your name alone, right?
Yes.
Andrew Romero had no ownership interest in this vehicle, correct?
No.
Never.
No.
And it would have been your responsibility and your responsibility alone to make sure the title was correct, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's talk for a moment. Let's fast forward to the day in question, May 25th of 2015 for a second, okay?
Okay.
Now, before May 25th of 2015, you were, in essence, homeless, right?
Yes.
Your mom had kicked you out because you were hanging around with Andrew and getting high, right?
Yes.
And you and Andrew would either stay in your vehicle or you would sleep wherever people would have you, right?
Yes.
And you would begin each day, or you were smoking meth every day, right?
Yes, sir.
And which meant oftentimes staying up all night, right?
Yes, sir.
And before May 25th of 2015, how many days consecutive had you been without sleep?
I don't recall.
Is there any way or anything that would jog your memory of how many days you've been awake?
No.
Okay. But the day of May 25th began like most of your other days, correct?
Yes.
The sun rose and you were high on meth, right?
Yes.
And you got in the shower. When you said you started your day, it would mean, for you starting your day would mean shower if there was one available, and smoke more meth, right?
Shower, get ready, and get high in the process, yes.
Yeah, because part of the process for you of starting your day was getting high.
Yes.
Okay. And on this day, May 25th, you were living, or you were staying that night with Andrew's auntie,
Yes, sir.
and her name is what?
Angel Romero.
Okay. And so you testified earlier that Andrew got up and he fixed, right?
Yes.
And when we talk about fixing, that means injecting heroin, correct?
Yes, sir.
And your testimony was that Andrew was using heroin all day, every day, correct?
Heroin and meth, yes.
Okay. And if he's just injecting heroin, then he's just using that drug. But if he's using meth and heroin together, injecting it, that would be called a speedball, would it not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then he was, according to your testimony, smoking meth with you as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll just ask you first. Something happens to the body when you become addicted to methamphetamine, correct?
Objection. She's not an expert. I think you need to bring in a doctor.
I know she gets sick. She gets sick when she withdraws.
Well, she hasn't testified.
Yeah, I told that was her, but no generalized.
Okay. With you, just you. You've told me previously that you would get sick if you began to withdraw, correct?
I just get real weak and my bones start to hurt.
Okay. And that's dope sickness, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you suffered from dope sickness if you didn't stay high, right?
Yes.
So you did your very best to smoke methamphetamine, not only to get high, but to ward off feeling sick, right?
Yes.
Nobody likes to feel sick, right?
No.
You didn't want to. And so just for you now, I'm asking you, you did whatever needed to be done to stay high, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that included, in your own words, earlier, participating in robberies
Yes.
and deal meth.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you've never, you've testified that you weren't injecting heroin at all, right?
No, sir.
And you didn't smoke heroin, right?
No.
And methamphetamine is actually not your favorite drug, is it?
No.
Your drug of choice is crack cocaine, right?
Yes.
But during this period of time, we're talking about methamphetamine, right?
Yes.
All right, so your testimony is that, that you got ready, got high, Andrew fixed, which means he shot up heroin, and then the two of you went and robbed Taco Bell, right? That's what you testified to earlier?
Yeah, you left out the part that we went to go pick up my friend and drop her off at work.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry I left that out. That was non-nefarious behavior. That was actually a part of your day when you weren't committing crime, right?
Right.
Objection, Your Honor.
Oh,
All right. So you pick up your friend, you take her to work, and then you go and rob Taco Bell, right?
yes.
Okay. And you get the money from Taco Bell. Do you know how much it was?
No, I don't.
And you went immediately and spent that money on more meth for you and more heroin for Andrew, right?
Yes. Andrew gave me some money so I could go get me some meth. Yes.
Okay. And then after you smoked and he fixed, you went over to his auntie's house, right?
I went back to his auntie's house.
And then you proceeded to get into a fight with his auntie, right?
Yes.
And that's how you got those scratches on your face.
Yes.
Because she was accusing you of sleeping with her boyfriend, right?
Yes.
Stretch or Slim or whatever his name is.
Yes.
Right? And so you couldn't stay at the auntie's house because the two of you just got into a fist fight, right?
Yes.
So based on your testimony, you hop in the Durango and you go cruise around, getting high again, looking for more places to rob, right? That's your testimony?
Yes.
Okay. And you drove out near the casino when Andrew fixed and you smoked, right?
We were getting high, yes.
Okay. And then your path led you, as you've testified to Rio Rancho.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And during all this, I think I left part of this out. One of the things you did during the day was go to a halfway house, right?
Yes, sir.
Because a girl in a halfway house, based on your experience, what's a halfway house?
A place for people that are getting out of prison to go if they don't have an address.
Generally designed for sober living, correct?
Yes.
And part of your activities during May 25th, after you robbed Taco Bell, before you headed to Rio Rancho, was go to this sober living halfway house and sell methamphetamine to one of the residents, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then you find yourself in Rio Rancho, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And your testimony is that you were looking to hit someplace, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you stopped off at the Valero store, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's talk about the Valero for a moment.
Okay.
Now, you've testified previously that the two of you did not rob convenience stores, right?
No.
You were selective in the places you knocked off for a variety of reasons, right?
Yes.
Fast food was quicker and easier than convenience stores, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And the Valero was no different, right?
No.
You did not plan, and Andrew did not plan to rob the Valero, right?
No.
Okay. And so you go in and you testified that you bought Cheetos and you bought some cheese to dump over them, right?
Right.
Okay. And you've also testified, I believe, if not, I'll ask you the question, that Andrew never went inside the Valero, did he?
Not that I recall.
Okay. And so when we see video footage of you coming in and out and walking around the Valero, that's because you were in the store, right?
Yeah.
But you know that Andrew stayed outside by the truck, right?
And that I recall, yes.
Yeah. And you don't recall standing at the register with Andrew, acting strange, do you?
No.
No. You don't recall standing at the register with Andrew, looking around to steal?
No.
You don't recall going into the Valero with Andrew to case the place, right?
No.
No. You were there for one purpose, and that was to buy snacks.
Snacks.
Hot Cheetos to dump cheese on and maybe get a Coke and some cigarettes.
And some gas.
And some gas.
Yes.
Okay. So your presence at the Valero was one of the other non-criminal things you did that day, right?
Yes.
Okay. You then turn on to Southern because, as you've testified, you're looking to hit someplace and Andrew's calling the shots, right?
Yes.
Okay. And your characterization during your direct testimony is that Andrew was the brains behind this, right?
He always picked the places that we were going to hit.
And you've told the police many times, and I'll get into the individual statements in a moment, but that Andrew forced you along and you were an unwitting participant in all this, right?
Yes.
And that's just not true, is it?
No, it's not.
No. You had a dope habit that needed to be fed, right?
Yes.
And you needed money just as bad as Andrew, right?
Yes.
And you wanted to hit these places just as much as Andrew did, right?
Yes.
Because you weren't working,
And I needed money for drugs.
and dope's not free, right?
Nope.
So your testimony today is that you came upon what looked to be someplace that might be a potential to rob, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's at Twister's.
Yes.
And tell the jury what Twister's is.
It's mostly a burrito place that we go in the mornings to get burritos. It's my favorite burrito place. So, but they sell other things too there.
So the plan was to rob one of your favorite stores, your favorite eateries.
Yes.
All right. But that never happened because you never got around to it because somebody intervened, right?
Yes.
Okay. And based on your previous testimony, you're driving down Southern, and you notice that it was noticed, either by you or Andrew, that there's a police vehicle behind you, right?
Yes.
And that turned out to be Officer Benner's police SUV, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were driving because you testified that Andrew was a little paranoid when you were at the gas station?
Yes. When I came back to the truck, Andrew said that for me to drive because there's too many police out. So.
Okay. Now, before we get to the stop, I want to talk to you about drug use immediately prior to the stop, okay? Now, you have testified previously, I believe when I talked to you just a couple of weeks ago, that, that Andrew had both used heroin and smoked methamphetamine within about 30 minutes of the stop, right?
Yes.
Do you recall previously telling the district attorney during your debrief that immediately prior to the stop, you were smoking meth in anticipation of the robbery, and Andrew was fixing in anticipation of the robbery?
The last time I smoked meth that day was right before I got out at the Valero. I just got done smoking. We were doing drugs the whole way over there. The whole time we were driving over there, we were getting high.
Okay. Do you recall telling at least the lawyers for the state and me that that Andrew was fixing, which means he was shooting up immediately prior to the stop, and he was kind of in a zone, in his own zone?
I don't recall.
What's that?
I don't recall.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that in a minute during the individual statements. But you will agree that Andrew used drugs in a very, very short period of time before the stop, right?
The last time that either of us used drugs was when we stopped at the Valero.
Okay. And you testified a moment ago that sometimes when Andrew would use heroin, he'd nod off, right? And nodding off, for those uninformed about the ways of heroin, just means to kind of doze off, to sleep, right?
Yes.
With meth, though, that's way different, right?
Right.
And when you smoke meth, you've testified previously, very alert, right?
Yes.
And I think you said today that that when you smoke meth, you're pretty coherent to everything, right?
Yes.
That's what you said today on the stand, right?
Yes.
And I can only assume that when you say you're pretty coherent to everything, that means you know what's going on around you.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what the truth is.
Yes.
You know what's happening.
Yes.
Your perception's not distorted.
No.
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 You have to answer aloud.
Okay. So then you see the lights behind you, right?
Yes.
And Andrew tells you, pull over.
Pull over.
Okay. He doesn't tell you to run.
No.
He doesn't tell you, let's kill a cop.
No.
In fact, he says, go ahead and pull over.
Yes.
So you pull to the side of the road, you pull into the parking lot by the Arby's, correct?
Yes.
All right. And then you testified that the officer got down and approached you and began to ask you for your license and registration, right?
Yes.
And you gave him your valid driver's license, right?
Yes.
And this is based on your testimony.
Yes.
And you explained to him that, and you gave him some paperwork regarding the registration, right?
Yes.
Because there was some conversation about whether or not the plates matched the car, right?
Correct.
And you were going to call your mom and have your mom straighten it all out, and the officer wasn't having any of that because you're a big girl, right?
Yes.
And your testimony is that that today is that that Andrew gave the officer the name Albert, right?
Yes.
And I think you've said in the past that it was Albert Fresquez. Does that ring any bells?
Yes.
Okay. So police officer goes back to his vehicle, right? And your testimony today is that there was no plan being hatched while he's back in his vehicle to murder a police officer, right?
No, sir.
No, Andrew wasn't making any motions or loading any guns to kill this cop, right?
No, sir.
No. In fact, your testimonies today, both of you were pretty calm, right? You were sitting there waiting for the officer to come back, right?
Yes.
Because at this point in time, you thought that the officer was going to say, be on your way, right?
Yes.
And you said he was pretty nice, right? And there was certainly no indication at this point in time from Andrew or anyone else that there was some plan afoot to murder a cop, right?
Correct.
So, in your testimony today, officer comes back to the window and relays to you that, look, I know you're out from outside the county, right? I know you're on probation and you're outside of your jurisdiction, right?
Yes, sir.
And when he says that, he confirms that he knows that you are on parole, right?
Yes.
And tell the jury what happens to you if you get arrested for a parole violation.
It's up to the probation officer if they want to revoke me, because they could either just let it go or they could do a full repercussion or do it steps. A full repercussion is with being on parole. If you violate, you have to go back to prison and see the parole board, and it's their decision on what they want to do with you. And on the steps, if they just decide to do a sanction, it's up to the PO what they decide the punishment should be.
And certainly, in your experience, from what you know about being in the joint, the sanctions are based on the violation, right?
Yes.
So maybe being outside the county is not that big of a deal, right? Being outside the county, but certainly possession of meth is a big deal, right?
Yes.
And being involved in robberies is a big deal, right?
Yes.
And so you knew good and well that the drugs that were sitting in the console that you stuck in your bra could very well get you sent back to prison, right?
Yes.
And we've already talked about how much you love your daughters, want to be a part of their life, and you don't want to go back to prison any more than Andrew did, right?
Correct.
Yeah. You had a lot to lose that day, did you not?
Yes.
Yeah. Your freedom? Yes?
Yes.
Your kids?
Yes.
Yeah. Your life in general, right?
Yes.
And you knew that, that testing positive for meth was also going to be a bad thing, right?
Correct.
And you figured that if they took you in, your probation officer would make you drop a urine, right?
Correct.
When I say drop a urine, I mean give a urine test, right?
Yes.
And you'd already figured out how to dodge urine tests in the past, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because while on probation, the probation officers aren't very sneaky about when they're going to give you drug tests, are they? You know that you go in once a month and drop a urine, right?
I had just started going in once a month. Before that, before I got graduated to just once a month, I was on the I had to call every morning, Monday through Friday, and it would tell me if I had to go in and test that day or not.
And you were able to stay clean during this portion, that period of time, right?
Yes.
But when you were testing once a month, you knew that you had a lot of latitude because you weren't going to get called in because you knew the day you had to go in, right?
Yes.
But you knew very well that if you had to drop a urine that day, it was going to be a hot for bath, right?
Yes.
And that's sending you right back to prison, right?
Yes.
Yes. Judge, may we take a break for a minute? I think we need to use the restroom.
All rise.